everyone, and welcome to the Virtual Kidz Expo. My name is Kurt Beecher, and I'm the Exhibit Development Specialist at MiSci, the Museum of Innovation and Science in Schenectady, New York. We miss seeing all of you this year at the Empire State Plaza, and we hope you enjoy this science activity we put together, exploring a fun topic in science called the Magnus effect. Have you ever wondered how baseball pitchers throw a curveball? Stay tuned to learn how that happens. And please visit our website at MiSci.org to explore more from our virtual program series. We're bringing live educators and hands-on science activities directly to you and your friends. Thanks for watching, and we hope to see you at the plaza soon. Today, we're going to do a neat little science experiment that's going to teach us a little bit about the things in the world around us. Now, in order to do this science experiment at home, if you want to, all you're going to need are a couple of cups. You're going to have to put them end to end. A little bit of tape. You tape around the center here so that it looks like this when you're done. And a few rubber bands, which you're actually going to loop together into one mega rubber band. And using these, we're going to be able to show you something really cool about a science called fluid dynamics. So what is a fluid? Well, you may have heard of liquids before, and I've got a little bit of liquid right here in this flask, and you're probably going to notice something about it. No matter what way I turn, the liquid changes its shape to fit inside of that container. Now, that's what a fluid is. It's something that changes its shape in order to fit in a certain area. Now, believe it or not, when a scientist talks about a fluid, they're not only talking about liquids, they could also be talking about gas, like the air around us. You can see it changing shape as I move my hands through it. They might even be talking about plasma, which you might have in some light bulbs around you. In any case, fluid is something that changes its shape in different containers and as things put pressure and forces on it. And we're going to use a little bit of that pressure and force to do something really neat with our experiment. But I'm not going to do it in here. I need a little bit of room. So let's go to a place with a bit more room so I can show you what this does. All right, everybody, so now that we're outside, I'm going to show you how to use the experiment. So go ahead and take your device here with the 2 cups, then take the rubber band. We're going to loop it around the center of it, leaving a few inches left for our finger. We're going to hook one of our fingers here, and then we're going to let it go like a slingshot. Now, you probably didn't see what just happened, so I'm going to show you from another angle. So check it out. Instead of flying straight, the cups start to curve in the air. This is something really cool. It's almost like a curveball, or if you've ever seen a soccer ball get kicked such that it curves. Well, in order to understand why it does that, we're going to have to learn a little bit about fluids and what we can measure about them. So what did we see in that experiment? Well, we saw our little device turn through the air. Now that's a little odd. You see, physicists like to say, in fact it's one of our laws, Newton's laws of motion, that things don't change their speed or their direction unless something pushes them. If I take this flask and I hold it right here in my hand, this flask isn't going to move on its own. It's going to take a force coming in order to move it, to tip it or to roll it. There's got to be an outside force. Well, what we saw in that experiment was something flying through the air. Now, I wasn't putting force on it with my rubber band anymore because the rubber band was back in my hand. But something was putting force onto our experiment and causing it to curve. And that something was air pressure. So when we talk about a fluid, we need to talk about something called pressure. Pressure is the amount of force, the amount of push that a fluid puts on things outside of it, or sometimes inside of it. Now, The reason it's able to push is because fluids are made up of all sorts of itty-bitty bits, itty-bitty molecules flying around in all different directions. And some of them run into things. Now, if any one of those things ran into something, you wouldn't feel it. It's a tiny little molecule, infinitesimally small. But when a whole bunch of them run into something, that's when you experience a noticeable force or pressure. Now, a long time ago, a scientist named Bernoullis discovered something really cool about pressure. He discovered that when a fluid is going faster, it has less pressure on the things around it. And we remember that as Bernoullis Principle. We use it today to design things like wings. And I can actually show you Bernoullis Principle. So take a look. I've got a strip of paper right here. Now, of course, I can blow on it. I can put a force on it and it moves upward. But what if I wanted to move it upward without ever directly blowing on it? I can use Bernoullis Principle for this. Watch this. I'm going to put a little fold into it. I'm going to hold it up under my mouth and watch this. See how the paper rose up even though I wasn't blowing on it? That's because the air I was moving with my mouth has less pressure. Lower pressure on top of the paper and higher pressure above causes the paper to move upwards. And that is one of the key parts of our experiment today. If you have high pressure on one side and low pressure on the other, then the high pressure is going to move it and the low pressure won't be able to push back hard enough. Whatever's in the middle is going to move towards the low pressure. Let's go ahead and see. Now that I've got it wrapped up again, let's see if I can make it curve right up over the camera. Remember, when you wind it around, make sure that it's just enough to touch it, but still a little loose. It'll work better that way. So what did we see in those experiments? Well, we saw the cups curve. And we know now that when we create areas of high and low pressure, they can exert a force onto things. And that's what's happening to those cups. But we don't really know how the cups were creating those pressures. And that is the essence of the Magnus effect. You see, when an object is traveling through the air and spinning at the same time, it creates areas of high and low pressure. To understand how, we're going to need to understand one or two more things about fluid dynamics. When we talk about fluids, we also have to talk about something called viscosity. Now, viscosity is pretty complicated, but to put it as simply as I can, it's a way of measuring how hard it is to change the shape of a fluid. Now, air, it's pretty easy to change its shape. We say it has a low viscosity. But some fluids, like honey, are a lot harder to change their shape. Think about how hard it is sometimes to squeeze out honey or to spoon it up. So, fluids like to stay together. When we take our experiment right here and we start it spinning, some of the air, some of that fluid around it, likes to stick in close to it in what we call a boundary layer. That boundary layer sticks on there really hard, and as you get further away, it sticks less and less. So when we start spinning our experiment, that means the air around it also starts to spin, and because of viscosity, likes to grab on and sort of drag the air around it. And as that happens, we change the speed of the air around it. And remember Bernoullis' principle, what does changing the speed do? It changes the pressure. As it spins, we end up with high pressure on one end and low pressure on the other. And that's because we had slow air on one side and fast on the other side. Let's take a look at a little animation that shows you what it looks like at a really small level. You see, as the object is traveling through the air, if we stay stuck on that object, it looks like the air is flying past. Now, as it spins, remember, the little bits of air close to that object are trying to grab on to the ones that are around it. And as they do so, they cause the speed of the air to change. Now here in this animation, we have different colors that allow us to see the speed. The more red a little bit is, the faster it's going, and the more blue something is, the slower it's going. So let's look at what happens. So take a look. Up here we have blue bits of air. Now remember, that means that they're going more slowly, so they have a higher pressure. Whereas down here, we have a bunch of red bits of air. That means they're traveling very quickly, so they have a low pressure. Let's slow this down so we can see it even more clearly. Take a look too. Some of the air even gets trapped behind the object as it's flying through. Now this happens with real things that are flying too, sometimes makes them wiggle. If you've ever flown a kite before, you might have found a spot where the kite starts to vibrate, starts to shake back and forth. That's actually the air behind getting caught and then snapping free one way or the other. People in the ancient world actually used to build kites that would vibrate and make a noise when this happened. They used to measure airspeed with them. The direction of the Magnus effect is changed by which way the object is rotating. So if you take your experiment and you turn it so the cup is like this, you can even get the cup to go up against the force of gravity for a little while. This effect is used in things like ships, very special ones, that are being tested to see if we can steer them with rotating cylinders. It was even used in some experimental airplanes. Thanks for learning a little bit with us today. Remember to like, share, and subscribe, and check out our YouTube channel for more science videos and more really cool videos from the MiSci archives. Until next time, remember that science is all around us. See you next time.